Welcome back. You got Will and I-Man here from the Block Runner MetaZone in Rovi, and today another huge update from Bitmaps.
Bitmaps.
Bitmap.
And Mscribe.
And Mscribe, yes.
This is the big one, dude. This is the one we've been waiting to not necessarily release, but just like,
Yeah.
unveil.
Yeah, so we've been working with Blockamoto and Track and SMB, and we were coming up with all the technical permutations of what makes sense for a standard parcel inscription.
Yeah. And when you say standard, I mean, it has to be as ubiquitously like applicable to as broad of a spectrum of ecosystem participants as possible.
That's right.
That's kind of like the backbone of this initiative, right?
Yeah. The whole design parameter is to enable the most possible outcomes.
Right. And so elaborate on that a little bit, because like, what's an example of a potential parcel standard that does the opposite?
Well, we did a video where we talked about Bliss and we talked about plot, and Bliss had a reasonable approach to doing an inscription.
Yeah.
And I don't, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think they're proposing it as a standard as I don't think anywhere, just an inscription process.
Basically, it's like we're doing a land sale offering on top of an existing bitmap. Here's how many parcels are within it.
Yeah.
In order for us to execute on this, we have to create some sort of mechanism.
When people purchase those parcels, they get at least something.
Right, and just to have some sort of like authenticity to that, making sure people aren't like double minting, and how do you verify which one's true, stuff like that.
Yeah, so in their inscription standard, it had like a secret password. They had the name of the parcel. They had all these things within the inscription, and what that did is it narrowed down the potential possibilities if this were adopted as the global standard, right?
Yeah, for all of bitmaps, correct.
So think about it like if you ever watch one of the Marvel movies, they had like this concept of a timeline, and when they removed one of the rocks, the timeline split. So you want to pick the path that gives you the most diverse outcomes.
Correct.
Because no one can ever say what's going to work in the metaverse, what's going to be sustainable, what's going to be successful, just in the same way. We can't look at the internet in the 1970s and say, yes, this internet is going to enable Twitter and YouTube and all kinds of...
Exactly.
Like, you can't make those predictions.
I totally agree. And that's how things become like like protocols, right? Because it's ubiquitous, but it's also everything is still aligned. Yeah. Right? So, yeah, each of these individual bitmaps can leverage this standard and, I guess follow through with this mechanism, this process to distribute these land parcels, but that doesn't mean every single one of these bitmaps are going to be like the same type of environment or experience, right? Each one's going to potentially be unique. It depends on what gets added on top of these standards, right?
Yeah.
Just like the internet is made of layers, right? But the very foundational layer it's like I don't know exactly what they're called, but it's like the communication layer essentially.
Yeah.
The very top layer is the application stuff. So
we're
a long way from getting to that point for Bitmap, but figuring this out at least gets like the groundwork for developers to start building the actual technology for this metaverse on Bitcoin layer, right?
Yeah.
So it's a big deal. So we're finally here. We have the official parcel standard.
Yes.
And we always knew, like, once this is figured out, we didn't know exactly how it was going to be figured out, but we knew it's obviously this is stage 2, that there's going to need to be a platform focused on facilitating this and servicing this type of operation, right? So that's where Mscribe comes in.
Yes. And part of the announcement is all the documentation to enable anybody to incorporate the standards into their platform or website or whatever.
Yeah.
And so Mscribe is just the first to adopt the standard and implement it, and so that anybody that wants to own their individual parcels, they can do so today. So it's ready.
Okay.
So let's take a look at what that kind of experience looks like. So you would go to Mscribe and connect your wallet, and you can see my inscriptions here. Once it's connected, you'll be able to see everything that I've inscribed as far as Bitmap goes. And, of course, you'll be able to see the different images that you've inscribed in the past as well. So yeah, it's all here.
I wonder if you have any of these.
Yeah, it's like those recursive bitmap punks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this holds you just like any other typical ordinal inscription application, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so There we go. So give me a second here. I'll blow this up. And yeah, so here, if I scroll down, you'll find images. There you are. The bitmap, the recursive punks.
That's your first little ordinal gang, eh?
Yeah.
So this is good. So I think in the future, these bitmaps that you own, though, since this is like a bitmap focused platform, right? So any ordinals, inscription platform has obviously an inventory where you could see.
Yeah.
Most of them have wallets, right? So Bitmap or Mscribe doesn't have its own dedicated wallet, right? Where we're integrating Xverse and Unisat wallet at the moment.
Correct.
So you're going to be able to view your inventory through this inventory display.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking in the future, these actual numbers.bitmaps are going to have the actual.
Yeah. Eventually, they'll have the actual image of the bitmap itself.
Yeah.
And so that's a bit of a effort for our devs to kind of incorporate, just because it has to record each individual image, exactly how the bitmap looks, and then create a PNG file and then show that PNG file. Right. So it's quite the work, but ultimately we want to get rid of these numbers, and then we want to show the actual inscription. And of course, the number will still be here. It's just you'll see the image itself. Okay. But let's go ahead and click on one of these guys, and you'll see. So this is one of my bitmaps, and if you click on one of these parcels, it'll tell you some information here. So if I zoom in, you'll be able to see that the transaction ID, the value, which was 25 Bitcoin, and then the V bytes. So some information will be here. And then this is cool because we'll be able to add, if we discover more stuff, we can add stuff here. And
so there's something interesting about these parcel details, right? So there's actually, it's not so intuitive to a new user, but there are some like 3D manipulation controls. As part of this interface, right? Yeah. So like those value data is actually are represented in this three-dimensional environment. So it looks like a 2D display, doesn't it?
It does. It does. But if you use the numbers 1, 2, 3 or WASD, you're able to manipulate this in a 3D world.
So you guys, if you've been following us on Twitter and stuff, we've been kind of like teasing you guys with this over the last couple of weeks. Yeah. I've been doing my Blockamoto paintings and stuff on this, but here we go. This is the representation of what exactly?
Yeah. So this is, if you click number 2, so 1 will give you back to where you started, right? Number 2 is a 3D representation of the transaction size in relation to its height.
Interesting. So basically how much Bitcoin? Or
yes, correct. Okay. How much Bitcoin is moved per transaction?
Gotcha.
And you'll see the relative differences from each other.
That's fucking
and
cool.
And then if you use number 3, it uses the V bytes in terms of height.
So what are V bytes exactly for those who don't know?
So V bytes is short for virtual bytes, and every transaction takes up space in a given block. And that space is measured in virtual bytes.
Gotcha.
And so you can imagine what's happening here. These transactions, if you click on this, it'll tell you that you move 14 Bitcoin and you have 4,854 V bytes versus a small one. You moved 0.07 Bitcoin, 259 V bytes.
Interesting.
So you can see the differences between all of these.
So this is like the beginnings of, this is what's so interesting and unique about why we needed to build a platform like Inscribe, right? Is because these are very unique attributes, or eventually they're going to be called block attributes to these bitmaps that I don't think any other like existing ordinal platform can kind of like convey as far as like a value to these individual assets, right?
Yeah, correct.
So this is like the very MVP version of like at least getting that value mechanism exposed, right? There's a lot of potential value within the data of each of these bitmaps, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is just a 3D representation of a block explorer. It's not representative of the virtual world.
Right. Even though it looks like a sector out of like Manhattan or something.
Yeah, right.
That's not what this is.
Yeah.
This isn't like a, damn, I don't know why Manhattan. This isn't, fuck, I don't know.
Yeah, this isn't representation.
The Upper East Side or whatever.
Yeah.
That's the only one I know.
So this is not like the virtual world, right? This is just a 3D block explorer. That's it, right? And maybe, I mean, we could.
Maybe somebody could.
You could, yeah.
If you owned this bitmap and you just felt like, let me just wrap these structures with some sort of 3D texture.
Yeah.
And then that becomes
and then created an avatar system, and then you can conceivably just jump around and kind of run around in this world. But you could do way more than just that. So
exactly.
I just don't want to give the impression that this is the metaverse. This is just a 3D explorer.
Thanks for that clarification, dude. just for the fudders out there who see that, like, this is what you guys are all excited about. Like, no, that's not it. This is just the data representation that exists, right? And that data can be leveraged in so many different ways, like through different kinds of AI or generative tools, right, to produce who knows what.
Correct.
But nonetheless, you as a visitor to Mscribe and a prospective inscriber of these individual bitmaps, this is the surface layer data that is visible at the moment, right?
That's right. That's right. So this is again the 3D Explorer, but the main goal for today is to be able to inscribe your individual parcels.
Yeah.
And so let's say you wanted to inscribe these parcels, you can go to parcels and then click and drag and just inscribe as many as you want, as long as this bitmap is yours, right? So you'll be able to go and kind of click around and be able to inscribe different parcels from other people, but they're not considered valid. So that's why track is such an important role here, because track is the one that identifies what is valid and what isn't according to the bitmap standard.
Right. Yeah.
And so for today, right, version 1 release of this thing, the standard is that district owners own the parcels.
Right.
Right. And so with this release, that means you have to be the district owner, and then you can inscribe your own parcels. And so in the future, you'll be able to go to a district that you don't own and inscribe those parcels on your behalf, as long as the district owner enables it.
Yeah.
All right. So that's going to be another part of track and their whole tracking system of indexing.
Yeah, it's definitely critically important to understand, right?
Yeah.
So in the future, there's going to be, I mean, this is just V1 for this platform too. Like, we have a lot of ambitions as far as like where we want to take this. But like you said, setting the ground stage for this is really important. So yeah, we're super excited that the standard has been announced, and like you said, so it's considered what it is. We agree as far as like broadening as far like as much of the scope as possible, because we can't predict the future. If that's one of like the core lessons we've learned in our experience, like developing in the metaverse, it's very unpredictable. You don't know where the true value is going to come from within the ecosystem, right?
100% correct.
Yeah.
So let's go a little bit deeper onto the standard that's been announced. So if you remember, it's going to be the transaction ID dot block number dot bitmap. And so whenever you select any one of these parcels, you'll see the transaction ID number, which is 18303894, which is the block height or your district, and then .bitmap. And so the reason why this is important, this structure is important, is because we want to enable 1 million bitmap holders. Right now, there's only about 800,000 districts. Yeah. Right. You can't conceivably fit 1 million people into that ecosystem, right? Because then it'd be one per person, and even then, it's 800,000 holders, which would be kind of amazing. Yeah. But that's not reality, and so the way to onboard 1 million holders onto Bitmap is if you keep the Bitmap sort of structure .bitmap, but then you just append a transaction ID in front. And so now we've accomplished that. So now, assuming 1 million people come into this ecosystem and they adopt some of these parcels, you could conceivably think that we could reach 1 million holders of Bitmaps.
Yeah, 1,000%. So this asks the questions, like, because, we've seen other standards come about where it's like, well, what about, how do we have consensus around things like, how do I add like size limitations to these actual or size parameters to these squares, so I can actually start to build real 3D virtual environments off of them? Or how do I add images, stuff like that?
So this is going to be completely up to the community, right? Yeah. This square is, if we go back to properties and we click on this square here, it's going to tell me it's 25 Bitcoin, 157 V-bytes. One project might recognize a square as like a gigantic square. Yeah. Right. Because that's how they see things, right? 157 V-bytes or 25 Bitcoin, they can size it based on the size of Bitcoin. Another project may see this and they say, hey, I want a world with a bunch of circles, right? And so I'm going to make 25 Bitcoin, relative size into a circle instead of a square. Yeah. So that is the open potential that we're trying to enable here, because it's hard to know exactly what's going to work. And so we have to enable the openness of this.
Yeah, 1000%.
And so I think from the perspective of standards, it's just the .bitmap standard and then the parcel standard, and that's pretty much it. Like,
yeah,
I can't think of anything beyond that, but who knows? There might be other standards that might make sense, but yeah, openness.
Yeah, openness, and like don't add too much complexity this early on, so that we can still like participate and still, you know, leverage other innovations from the broader ordinals ecosystem, right? Like things like recursive inscriptions that are starting to emerge. I don't think it's entered the stage where there's like a overall consensus as far as like a standard approach to how to implement this, but I think we can imagine a future where we could change the state of assets, like a bitmap itself. This is the current state that exists based on, because it is just a root standard framework where you just all it's telling you, this little bit of information, or at least all we can extract from the Bitcoin blockchain is like the parcel number, the bitmap number, and that it's associated to the bitmap standard itself. That's it.
That's right.
But you could link this to other bits of information that is rooted into the Bitcoin blockchain to where you could point them together.
Yes.
Right? That's the whole point of recursion, right?
Yes.
Where now this thing that tells me that, you know, there's this setup for a virtual environment. Now each of these little squares can have images on them.
Yeah, 100%.
Or they could have, you know, individual 3D models within each of them that have been generatively produced based on some recursive inscriptions that are also inscribed into the future, right?
That's right.
We want to leave that open as possible so that so bitmaps can tie into all of that.
Dude, imagine if I went, you sent me a link to your bitmap, right? And it's on the Mscribe, and I clicked on number 2, right? And number 2 showed me all the different GLB models that people have deployed on top of these
That'd
squares.
Be sick, dude. I want to see.
And it would be like, you know, you would see like an elephant or whatever 3D model that you can come up with. You can inscribe it, and it could be visualized here.
Yeah.
And that could be something that people care about.
1000%. That 3D model itself could just be a GLB file that's individually inscribed, and it just exists in the Bitcoin blockchain, right? But that recursive pointer that now it's only assigned to this specific parcel within this specific bitmap.
Right.
That's how we're going to be able to render it exactly where it needs to be.
And this is just a simplistic representation of what we're trying to enable here is the most open like outcomes. Obviously, you know, the metaverse isn't about deploying just GLBs on top of a square, right?
Yeah.
It's more crazier than that, right?
1000%.
Right. But as a project, we could say, hey, there's some value here. People may want to do that, and so we would enable it. So we don't know exactly how this is going to roll out, but if you guys have suggestions on improvements, let us know in the comment section below. This is going to be a work in progress. This is just V1. There's going to be different phases to this website and like this whole growth of ecosystem. We're going to be enabling all kinds of things. This is just day 1 functionality, and you know, the updates are going to be coming fast and furious.
Correct. Yeah. So we're excited for that for sure. This is definitely a collaborative process. But yeah, this is definitely stage 2 in full swing, building the infrastructure components for that, you know, the rest of the developers to kind of build on top of it. You know, we're going to get quickly probably to stage 3, which is going to be much more focused on bringing a little bit more like actual virtual environment rendering type stacks to this ecosystem, right? So like what's the experience going to be? Right. So that we need this stage to kind of like proliferate, and then we need a consensus around all this, and then we can start to focus on that, right?
Yeah, 100%. All right, guys. Just like I said, if you come up with new functionalities that you think we should add, let us know in the comment section below. I'll also tweet at us with new comments or anything that you think we should change here. Also, make sure you follow us on Twitter at the Blockrunner, at MetaZone.io, and at Rovi AI, and also at Mscribe.
Oh, damn! I already put my peace sign up and everything.
That's why I stopped. That's why I stopped.
Okay.
Also at Mscribe.io, and that's it. We'll catch you in the next video.
All right, peace.